They called it the grave of the Wehrmacht. But Stalingrad was not just a city. It was a meat grinder.
Millions of men marched in. Less than 10% would ever walk out alive.
Welcome to the bloodiest battle in human history. Welcome to hell on earth.
August 1942. Hitler orders his Sixth Army to capture the city, named after his enemy, Joseph Stalin.
The plan was simple. Bomb the city to dust, then walk in and take the ruins. But the ruins didn't surrender. The rubble became a fortress, and the hunter became the prey. Tanks were useless here. Air power was limited. It was a brutal knife fight in a phone booth.
You could survive a charge across an open field. But here, death was invisible. By November, the Germans controlled 90% of the city. They thought the war was over, but they were wrong.
While the Germans celebrated in the ruins, a massive trap was forming on the snowy flanks. 1 million Soviet soldiers waited in the white silence, hidden, ready to strike.
November 19th. The earth shook. Thousands of Soviet guns opened fire at once. The sky screamed. Katyusha rockets rained fire down on the stunned German flanks.
T-34 tanks smashed through the weak Romanian lines. The pints were closing.
In just 4 days, the trap snapped shut. The hunters were now the trapped rats.
300,000 German soldiers were surrounded, cut off from food, ammo, and hope.
Temperatures dropped to 30 below zero. Engines froze. Men froze where they stood.
Starvation set in. They ate horses. They ate leather. Some even ate each other.
Hitler forbade surrender. But as the snow buried the dead, something even deadlier was approaching.
Hermann Goering promised an air bridge. He promised food from the sky. He lied. The soldiers looked up, waiting for salvation. But the sky was empty. Rations were cut to 1 slice of bread. Then there was no bread at all. The cold killed more men than the bullets. Sleep was a death sentence. January 26th, the Soviets sliced the German army in half. The end was days away.
Soviet tanks rolled up to the German headquarters. They were knocking on the door.
Inside, General Paulus waited. He radioed Hitler for permission to surrender, to save his men.
The reply came. Hitler promoted Paulus to Field Marshal. It was a cryptic message.
No German field marshal had ever been taken alive. Hitler was not sending a promotion. He was demanding a suicide.
January 31st, Paulus surrendered. The first German field marshal to ever be captured alive.
The southern pocket collapsed. 2 days later, the northern pocket surrendered. The battle was over.
91,000 men marched out of the ruins. They were ghosts wrapped in rags. They formed a line of misery stretching for miles. A broken army of walking skeletons. The Soviets watched them pass. There was no pit, only cold silence. Then began the march to Siberia. A death march across the frozen, endless steppe.
If you stopped, you died.
They walked for weeks. Destination, the Gulag camps. Most would never see Germany again. Out of 91,000 prisoners, only 5,000 would ever return home.
The guns were finally silent. But as the snow melted, the city revealed its darkest secret.
Spring came, the snow melted, and the earth vomited up the dead, layers of them.
The cleanup took years. They found 2 million bodies. The city was one giant cemetery.
Stalingrad was the turning point. The Nazi war machine stopped. Then, it went in reverse.
In Germany, the radio played solemn music for 3 days. The myth of invincibility was broken.
The Red Army had a new target. Not defense, but revenge. The road to Berlin was open.
The Sixth Army was gone. Hitler had lost a quarter of his entire force on the Eastern Front.
Morale shifted. The Russians knew they could win. The Germans knew they could die. The city was destroyed, but the spirit of resistance survived. Stalingrad became a legend, but the German beast was wounded, not dead. It would strike back one last time with a new monster.
Hitler unleashed his new toy, the Tiger tank. Heavy armor, a massive 88mm gun.
It was a monster. One Tiger could destroy 10 Soviet tanks before they even got in range. July 1943. A massive bulge formed in the front line. The Germans called it the Kursk salient. Stalin answered with mass production. Factories in the Urals worked day and night. Quantity was their quality.
The Soviets poured steel into the bulge. They knew the Germans were coming, and they were ready.
They laid 1 million mines. They dug 3 defensive lines. They turned the earth into a trap.
The Germans brought their own tank killers. Stukas armed with cannons hunted tanks like eagles hunting rabbits.
Hitler's plan was simple. Operation Citadel. Pinch off the bulge. Destroy the Red Army once and for all.
2 million men waited in the summer heat. The silence was louder than the guns.
July 5th. The earth exploded. The greatest tank battle in human history had begun. July 12th. Prokhorovka. 600 tanks charged like medieval knights on a field of steel.
The Russians got close, too close. They rammed the Tigers to jam their turrets.
The dust was so thick, day turned to night. Men fought blind in a burning fog.
There was no strategy here, only a chaotic brawl of metal and fire.
By evening, the field was a graveyard. Burning hulks littered the horizon.
The Germans destroyed more tanks. But they lost something they could not replace. Time.
The elite panzer divisions were bled dry. The spine of the Wehrmacht was cracked.
The Red Army did not stop. They reloaded. And they kept rolling west.
Hitler canceled the operation. For the first time, a German summer offensive had failed completely.
The initiative was lost forever. The hunters were now the hunted, and the road to Berlin was open. June 1944. Stalin launched Operation Bagration.
They came from the swamps, where no tanks were supposed to go. The surprise was total.
In 2 weeks, 28 German divisions were erased. It was worse than Stalingrad.
The retreat turned into a rout. There was no front line anymore, only panic.
Behind the lines, partisans blew up the trains. The Germans had nowhere to run.
Army Group Center ceased to exist. A hole 400 miles wide opened up in the German front. January 1945. The Red Army crossed the border. The war had finally come home to Germany. Their cities burned. Their armies were gone. But the Nazi beast refused to die.
The Soviets stopped at the River Oder, 40 miles from Berlin. The final battle was about to begin.
April 1945. Berlin was a fortress. Hitler ordered every man to fight to the death.
Zhukov turned on 100 searchlights. He blinded the German defenders.
Silo Heights, the last gate to Berlin. It was a slaughterhouse of mud and blood.
They broke through. Soviet tanks crushed the Berlin suburbs. The road to the Reichstag was open.
Berlin became Stalingrad, room to room, floor to room. The hunter was now the prey, the Reichstag, the symbol of power. Soviet soldiers fought their way up the marble stairs.
Deep underground, Hitler trembled. His empire was burning above his head. The end was hours away.
A Soviet soldier climbed the shattered dome. He held a red flag. The world held its breath.
May 2nd, 1945. The red banner flew over the ruins. The fascist beast was finally slain.
Hitler took the coward's way out. He shot himself in a dark hole while his empire burned.
The German commanders surrendered. The 1,000-year Reich had ended in a pile of rubble.
Then, silence. For the first time in 6 years, the guns were quiet. It was over. But the price was staggering. 27 million Soviet citizens, dead. A generation wiped out. The shooting stopped, but a new war began. Stalin redrew the map. The Iron Curtain descended.
The soldier sat down. He was alive. But a part of him had died back in Stalingrad.
Mothers waited for sons who would never come home. The grief was an ocean deep enough to drown the world.
Seasons changed. The tanks rusted. Grass grew over the bones. Nature reclaimed the battlefield.
Today, stone giants stand watch over the Volga. But if you listen closely to the wind, you can still hear them.
Stalingrad is gone. Volgograd stands in its place. But the scars remain on the soul of the city.
It is a city built on bones. Every step you take here is a grave.
They fought for every brick. They saved the world from darkness. Would we have the strength to do the same?
Stalingrad proved that the Nazi monster could bleed. It was the beginning of the end.
But the beast of war is never truly dead. It only sleeps, waiting for us to forget.
War in Europe was turning. But across the ocean, another hell was burning.
We remember. So they did not die in vain. See you on the next battlefield.